1 million, 2 million, 5 million, or perhaps 10 million. These aren't just arbitrary figures, they are rough estimates of how many Epstein files the Department of Justice is currently refusing to review or release to the American public. This is a direct violation of an act of Congress, and it didn't take an army of investigators to prove it. It took the Midas Touch Network exactly 10 minutes to find a document in one of the Epstein dumps suggesting there are at least 1.22 million records related to the Ghislaine Maxwell investigation that were never even reviewed by the DOJ. Think about the sheer scale of that failure. For months, we've been told that over 1,000 DOJ and FBI officials have been working around the clock, billing tens of thousands of dollars in taxpayer-funded overtime to comb through these files. And yet, after all that supposed effort, a mountain of over 1 million pages suddenly appears out of thin air. This raises a massive red flag. If these people were truly doing their jobs, how did they miss a production of this magnitude? You don't need a law degree to see the scent of waste, fraud, and institutional abuse here. It suggests that either the system is staggeringly incompetent or it is being intentionally steered away from the truth. Amidst this chaos, Donald Trump has effectively issued a stop work order to the Department of Justice. Using his social media presence as a megaphone, he is demanding that investigators stop looking at any files that might involve his name. Instead, he is telling them to focus exclusively on Democratic targets, the ones he claims are in hot tubs with Bill Clinton. This is a shock defiance of the legal process. At the same time, we see the DOJ's own digital platforms being used to defend Trump every time his name surfaces in the Epstein records. It is a blurring of the lines between private defense and public prosecution that threatens the very foundation of our constitutional republic. On Christmas Day, while the country was celebrating, Trump doubled down on this narrative, calling the discovery of these records a Democrat-inspired hoax. He framed the entire ordeal as just another witch hunt designed to distract from his political successes. But look at the rhetoric. He is calling it a hoax while simultaneously demanding that the names of his enemies be released and embarrassed. This isn't just a political strategy. It is a calculated attempt to retraumatize victims by dismissing their suffering as a partisan game. Whether you are a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent, the law is clear. Release all the information. Redact the victims' identities, but release the truth. Anything less is a betrayal of the public trust. Let's talk about the first major red flag that should have every taxpayer in this country demanding an audit. We are told that since March, nearly 1,000 DOJ and FBI officials have been working around the clock. They have been billing tens of thousands of dollars in overtime hours, supposedly dedicated to one single task, going through these Epstein records. If that is true, then how is it possible for 1.2 million pages to be suddenly discovered now? What were these 1,000 people doing during those late-night shifts? You don't need 1,000 people to go through a few 100,000 documents. In any high-stakes litigation, professional teams handle millions of records, financials, emails, logs, with precision. Yet here, the DOJ acts as if they just found a mountain in the middle of a flat plain. It's not just a sign of incompetence, it's a sign of a deliberate stall. While the DOJ plays this game of hide-and-seek with the evidence, Donald Trump has moved from defense to an all-out offensive. He has effectively issued what we call a stop work order to the federal government. Through his social media platforms, he isn't just complaining, he is directing. He is telling the Department of Justice to stop looking at any files related to him and to refocus their entire energy on election fraud or Democratic targets. He is framing the constitutional requirement to release these files as a waste of time. This is a shock defiance of the rule of law. It is an attempt to use the presidency as a shield to dictate which parts of a criminal archive are relevant and which parts are hoaxes. The irony here is thick enough to choke on. At the same time Trump is calling for an end to the Epstein review, his own allies are taking over the social media accounts of the very department investigating him. We are seeing a real-time merger of private political interests and public legal institutions. Every time Trump's name appears in a flight log or a deposition, the official narrative shifts to defend him rather than to investigate the facts. This is the cockroach theory in full effect. If the DOJ is willing to be this blatant about missing 1.2 million pages, imagine what is happening in the rooms where the cameras aren't allowed. We are watching the gears of justice being jammed by the very hands that are supposed to keep them turning. While the legal world was reeling from the news of over 1 million missing records, Donald Trump chose the most public moment possible to launch his counterstrike. On Christmas Day, a time usually reserved for peace and reflection, he released a message that was less of a holiday greeting and more of a tactical diversion. He lashed out at what he called sleazebags, who loved Jeffrey Epstein, accusing them of giving him bundles of money and attending his parties. But if you look closely at the language, you realize we aren't just watching a political attack. We are watching a masterclass in psychological projection. This is Projection 101, accusing your opponents of the very things that are reflected in your own history. Think about the sheer audacity of the narrative. Trump called the Epstein investigation a Democrat-inspired hoax. He urged the DOJ to stop wasting time on what he termed a long-ago dead Jeffrey Epstein, and instead get back to helping our country by looking into election fraud. But here's the reality check. We have the flight logs. We have records indicating at least 8 different trips on Epstein's private jet, often referred to as the Lolita Express. We have the photos of him attending the very parties he now claims to despise. By calling the entire ordeal a hoax, he isn't just attacking a political party, he is attempting to rewrite his own biography in real time. He is telling his followers to ignore the physical evidence of the past in favor of the angry rhetoric of the present. The danger of this hoax narrative goes far beyond political optics. It is a direct assault on the credibility of the victims. When a former president, and a current leading candidate, labels a massive sex trafficking investigation as a witch hunt, he is effectively re-traumatizing the people who suffered under that system. He is telling them that their pain is nothing more than a partisan tool used to hurt him. Whether it's Russia, COVID, or now the Epstein files, the definition of a hoax in this world seems to be any truth that is inconvenient. By framing the December 19th deadline as a distraction, he is trying to convince the public that transparency is a weapon, rather than a requirement of a functioning democracy. This strategy is designed to create a fog of war. It forces the audience to choose a side based on loyalty rather than facts. He is banking on the idea that if he shouts hoax loud enough and often enough, the 1.2 million missing pages won't matter. He wants you to believe that the thousands of hours of FBI work were a waste of time, not because the crime didn't happen, but because the investigation might lead to places he doesn't want the public to go. We are seeing a high-stakes gamble where the prize is the total subversion of the judicial process. This isn't just a Christmas message, it's a warning shot, fired directly at the heart of the legal system. Now let's get into the weeds, the kind of technical details that the Department of Justice hoped would stay buried in a filing cabinet. We aren't just talking about vague theories anymore. We are looking at a specific hard drive sent to the Southern District of New York. A document dated October 30th reveals the exact language that elite litigators use when they're handling a mountain of evidence. It references a production sent via FedEx, containing what they call Bates numbers, labels used to track every single page in a legal war. The prefix was SDNYPD 0008 to 0014, and within that single workspace, it stated that approximately 1.22 million records were currently being imaged. Stop and think about that number for a second. That's 1.22 million records on just one hard drive from just one production. This wasn't the entire archive. This was just production number 8. What happened to productions 1 through 7? What happened to the records from the civil cases, the Southern District of Florida, or the Treasury Department? When we hear estimates of 5, 10, or even 15 million records existing in total, this hard drive is the smoking gun that proves those estimates are conservative. The DOJ isn't looking for a needle in a haystack. They are sitting on the entire haystack and pretending they can't find the farm. This is where the shock defiance from the top becomes so dangerous. When Donald Trump demands that the DOJ stop looking at these files, he is effectively telling them to ignore a digital paper trail that spans decades and multiple jurisdictions. He knows that in the world of electronic discovery, you don't just lose 1 million records unless you intend to. These aren't just scraps of paper. These are witness binders, search warrant results, and financial logs that were supposed to be produced under federal law. Every time a prosecutor like Maureen Comey secures a conviction, it isn't done with a few scraps of paper. It's done with tractor trailers worth of material. The reality is that the DOJ didn't find these files. They had them, they've always had them, they were billed for the overtime to review them. So when they claim a sudden discovery, they are admitting to a level of institutional failure that is either malicious or staggeringly incompetent. They are waiting for independent media to point out the missing millions before they even acknowledge their existence. By ignoring these Bates numbers and imaging logs, the DOJ isn't just failing a deadline, they are failing the very concept of transparency. They are banking on the hope that the public won't understand the technical jargon, but the numbers tell a story that rhetoric can't erase. To understand the true scale of the crisis we are facing, we have to look at what legal experts call the cockroach theory. It's a simple but terrifying principle. If you see one cockroach in your kitchen, you don't just have one cockroach, you have 50 hiding in the walls. The same logic applies to the Department of Justice and the Epstein files. If we have just uncovered 1 million missing documents through an independent review of a single hard drive, it is a mathematical certainty that there are multiples of that number still buried. We are likely looking at 5, 10, or even 15 million records that the executive branch has access to, but refuses to acknowledge. This isn't just an oversight, it's a systemic blackout. Think about where these files actually come from. We are talking about the entire apparatus of the executive branch. This includes the IRS, the Postal Service, the results of search warrants, and the subpoenas sent to major banks like JP Chase. These aren't scraps of paper found in a basement. These are the digital and physical fingerprints of a global criminal enterprise. When the DOJ claims they missed the biggest production in the history of the Southern District of New York, they are committing what many call a theft of honest service. They are being paid by the American taxpayer to provide justice and transparency, yet they are providing a half-hearted, half-assed search that only moves forward when independent media shames them into action. The paralysis here is profound. How do 1,000 federal officials working in multiple shifts fail to find the primary document pile for the very case they are supposed to be investigating? You cannot try a high-level case like the one against Ghislaine Maxwell and secure a 20-year sentence with just a few binders. There are tractor-trailers worth of material, electronic formats, witness statements, and financial trails. For the DOJ to wait until an independent social media feed points out a massive gap in their own production is a staggering admission of either total incompetence or deep-seated malice. They aren't just failing to find the needle in the haystack. They are pretending the haystack doesn't exist while they charge you for the time spent looking for it. This institutional decay is the heart of the scandal. When the pillars of our constitutional republic, the agencies meant to hold the powerful accountable, throw their hands up and claim it's a big mess, they are doing exactly what the defense wants. They are creating a world where war is peace and up is down. By allowing the archive to be defined by confusion rather than clarity, the DOJ is effectively protecting the status quo. They are waiting for the public to get a headache from the complexity and just look away. But the numbers don't lie, and the cockroaches are starting to come out into the light. As we close out 2025, we are witnessing one of the most sophisticated attempts to rewrite history ever recorded in American politics. To understand why Trump's shock defiance is blowing up the DOJ probe, you have to look at his Christmas message not as a rant, but as a confessional through projection. When Trump lashed out at those who loved Jeffrey Epstein and attended his parties, he wasn't just attacking political rivals, he was setting a trap for the truth. He claimed he dropped Epstein long before it became fashionable over a land deal, but this narrative collapses under the weight of the evidence the DOJ is now trying to redact. Let's look at the facts that the hoax narrative is designed to bury. We have the internal memo from federal prosecutors, dated January 8th, which explicitly stated that flight records reflect Donald Trump traveled on Epstein's private jet many more times than previously reported. We aren't just talking about 1 or 2 incidental trips. We are talking about a pattern of travel that occurred during the very periods the government expected to charge in the Maxwell case. When Trump claims he was never on the plane or at the stupid island, he is banking on the hope that his followers will trust his tweets over the DOJ's own awareness memos. But here is the most damning part of this confessional. By claiming he knew Epstein was a disgusting person and a sleazebag years ago, Trump has inadvertently admitted to being an enabler. If you are a first responder or a man of power and influence, and you know a monster is using your own club, Mar-a-Lago, as a predator hunting ground, you don't just cancel a membership. You call the police. You report the crimes. You protect the victims. By his own admission, he knew the nature of the predator and did nothing while hundreds of other women and girls were victimized. This is the shock defiance in its purest form. He is admitting he knew the truth, but he is framing his silence as a virtue. He is using the hoax label to shield himself from the legal reality of the flight logs. This isn't just a political disagreement. It is a fundamental test of the American legal system. If the DOJ allows this revisionist history to stand, if they allow these flight records to be buried under a mountain of redactions, then they aren't just failing to prosecute a case, they are participating in the erasure of the truth. We are watching the ultimate power grab, where the leader decides which parts of his own history are allowed to exist in the public record. As the investigation deepens, we are seeing the emergence of a classic counterintelligence tactic, poisoning the well. To understand why the DOJ probe is blowing up, you have to look at the bizarre story of the letter purportedly sent by Jeffrey Epstein to Larry Nassar, the disgraced doctor convicted of abusing the Olympic gymnastics team. This letter, found in prison and postmarked after Epstein's death, has become the centerpiece of a new disinformation campaign. The FBI reportedly sent it to a lab for handwriting analysis, but the results were never definitively shared with the public. Instead, we got a social media post from the Department of Justice using curious, non-committal language. They didn't say it was a scandalous fake or a total forgery. They said it was likely not Epstein's handwriting. In the world of high-stakes legal discovery, likely not is a massive gray area. It is just enough to create doubt without providing a definitive conclusion, and that is exactly what Donald Trump and his allies need. By focusing the entire public conversation on one potentially fabricated document, they are attempting to undermine the veracity of the entire 5 million-page archive. It is the cockroach theory flipped on its head. If you find one fake cockroach, then maybe the whole infestation is just an illusion. This is 1984 Orwellian logic in its purest form. War is peace, up is down. If one letter is a hoax, then the flight logs must be a hoax. If the handwriting is likely not his, then the thousands of victims' statements must be likely not true. This strategy is designed to make the American public throw their hands up in exhaustion and go, "It's all just a big mess. Who could possibly figure this out?" It is a deliberate assault on the pillars of our society, the criminal justice system, the courts, and the concept of objective truth. When you undermine the judges, the investigators, and the evidence itself, you aren't just defending a politician, you are dismantling the guardrails of the constitutional republic. We are watching a real-time effort to project a sense of total chaos onto the Epstein files so that the supporters, whose numbers are dwindling, feel justified in ignoring the mounting evidence. The goal isn't to prove innocence, the goal is to make the truth feel unattainable. By allowing likely not to replace beyond a reasonable doubt, the DOJ is participating in a narrative that turns the quest for justice into a hall of mirrors where no one can be trusted. Everything we have discussed, the million missing files, the stop work orders, the projection, and the fake letters, leads to one unavoidable conclusion. We are watching a deliberate attempt to drown the truth in a sea of manufactured confusion. This is the ultimate goal of the current defiance. It isn't just about winning a legal battle, it's about winning the war on reality itself. When the public is bombarded with contradictory claims and institutional failures, the natural human reaction is to look away. They want you to throw your NHA up and say, "It's all a big mess. Who could figure any of this out?" That exhaustion is their greatest weapon. This is 1984, brought to life in the halls of the Department of Justice. War is peace, ignorance is strength, up is down. By labeling every inconvenient fact as a hoax, while simultaneously using the power of the state to shield private interests, the very pillars of our society are being hollowed out. We are seeing a real-time projection where the criminal justice system is undermined, the judges are attacked, and the veracity of the process is questioned. This doesn't just protect one man, it dismantles the credibility of the entire American Republic. If the public can no longer trust the files, the logs, or the evidence, then the concept of accountability becomes a relic of the past. But here's the truth they don't want you to focus on. The numbers don't lie. 1.2 million records were hidden. The flight logs exist. The overtime was billed. No amount of social media shouting can erase the physical trail left behind. The shock defiance we are seeing is a desperate gamble to keep the cockroaches in the dark for just a little while longer. But the light is already being shined by independent voices who refuse to accept the government's spin. The question is no longer just about what Jeffrey Epstein did. It's about what the American government is willing to do to keep those secrets buried. If you believe that transparency is the only way to save this republic, then stand with us. Subscribe, share this analysis, and join the conversation in the comments. Which bombshell from these files concerns you the most? Do you still believe the system has the strength to police its own leaders? The fog is thick, but together, we can see through it. Stay sharp, stay informed, and never let them tell you that the truth is a hoax.